Thank you for auditing the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who once again gets to speak about an album that's actually in French. Now, over the weekend, I studied Stromae, who's from Belgium. Now I'll be approaching Dice B, who is from Montreal, Quebec, and his album Renaissance. And this is my Thunderground Thursday. This is where I try to cover music that you might not know, and really, music that's not in English, it's very probable that you don't know it. The hegemony of the English language, the cultural linguistic imperialism of America is almost complete. So I think it is more than just, hey, check out this new music, but hey, let's fight to have a more diverse culture. Not just in terms of race and gender and class, but in terms of language as well. Fortunately, this should be approachable to you if you are, like me, a big fan of whatever the hell is going on in underground hip-hop right now. I mean, the mainstream of hip-hop is interesting, and the underground is interesting. There's like 5 different kinds of underground, and if you're into this, I don't know, boom bap renaissance, the aesthetics of 90s hip-hop being reborn in the 2020s with rappers who are not just looking backwards, like rappers who are still making current relevant music, but in the older mode, then this is another great album for you. It is produced by the French-Canadian alchemist, Nicholas Craven, one of my favorite producers right now, if not my favorite producer right now. And this whole album, it's mostly produced by him, and it's all rhymed on by Dice B, who you will learn, it's pretty crazy that I'd never heard of him before, but that's the effect of this weird cultural imperialism. This whole album it really fits very nicely into this current mode that we're in, where artists, rap artists, and producers come out with albums very quickly, often with a very interesting and well-made beat, but not necessarily overworked. I don't think there's like a second part on most of the songs on this album, but it doesn't really matter. The rhymes are strong, very interesting, not overly technical, but also but never sloppy. It's just like, what's interesting is that, and I talked about this when I reviewed D-Track as well, which is also produced by Nicholas Craven, is that Nicholas Craven is doing something different. And if you don't speak French, if you weren't exposed to what is called l'âge d'or du rap français, the golden age of French rap right around the end of the 90s and the beginning of the 2000s, then you don't know what it sounded like. But French producers, especially the producers in Marseille, the southern city, my favorite city in France, allez l'OM, in the southern part of France in particular, they took a lot of they followed the lead of Mobb Deep and Wu-Tang Clan. They made something a little bit more polished, a little bit less rough, and much more sort of worldly in its approach. And what Nicholas Craven is doing is he's in amongst all the underground rappers. He's in with the Griselda folks, and he's in, obviously, with Ransom, and he's popping up all over the place on the Makami album. He's everywhere. But what he's doing is he's bringing in the aesthetics of boom bap from France. And people don't even know, right? I don't think they know. I mean, obviously Dice B would know because he's from Montreal, and one of the most interesting things about Québécois rap is that they are as influenced, if not more influenced, by rap in France than they are by rap in America. So this album fits very nicely in with that D-Track album. I suggest you listen to both of them. And what I did is I did a very little bit of research. So I should say that D-Track, Dice B, and Nicholas Craven have been contacting me on Instagram through Messenger before I set up my business account. Oh, by the way, I'm not going to do an NFT, so you can stop sending me NFT offers in my business email. So I have been in touch with them. So my opinion is a little bit clouded because I'm flattered that artists this good are reaching out to me. But it really is interesting because it shouldn't be this way. It shouldn't be that a podunk 30K subscriber YouTuber like myself would be so important. But that's kind of the world that we're in. And we really need to focus on and celebrate and recognize these artists. So I wanted to go a little bit deeper than just the back and forth that we had. And I watched an interview. And there was an interview on a French-Canadian hip-hop show. Think of sort of like The Breakfast Club on Hot 97, but with French Canadians. And I learned that Dice B is not some guy. He's a legend. If there was, is there? If there were, a international hip-hop Hall of Fame, Dice B would be there. He started a hip-hop radio show in 1990. And he's been rapping with his group, the Cat Burglars, and he's been active and helping to foster and grow this scene of Québécois rap for 30 years now? And interestingly, he was talking about why he decided to make this album, because I guess he wasn't even really into getting back into rapping. I think he was a little bit like a lot of us, sort of disenchanted with what's happened to hip-hop. And so he describes in this interview that he works at a school, right? I mean, that's the reality, right? You're not going to make enough money to live as a rapper or a DJ, no matter how influential you are. So he works at a school with kids, and, he sort of makes fun of modern French rap. He calls it Zumba music, which is really funny, because there is this weird sort of way over-reliance on kind of fake South American rhythms in current pop French rap, which is really sad to me, because French rap always has the option of having an authentic integration of African sounds into its music. So having weird South American sounds, which are artificial and just imported, like drill, like not organic to the art form. So he seemed a little bit disenchanted with Zumba, but apparently some of these kids played him some beats from Griselda, played him some beats from this invisible renaissance that's been happening in hip hop. So in this interview, he's sort of talking about his perspective. He talked about how sad he was when the HMV in Montreal closed down. I remember going to that HMV. I go to Montreal about once a year. And I remember when it closed down and that sense of sadness, By the way, would there be interest in me doing a documentary on Québécois rap? It would be a lot of work. I'd probably have to do it over the summer. I'd want to do it in English and then one version in French. Would there be interest in that? Trying to interview these guys and talk about what's happening now and what happened in the past? I feel like there should be more about this, and maybe I'm the guy to do it. You can tell me in the comments if you think that's interesting. Maybe I'll get a GoFundMe or a GoFme account. So he's talking about Canadian rap, and what's great is, as he's talking, it's clear to me that there's just all of this history that I'm unaware of. I only know of a couple just random names in French Canadian rap, Rain Man and Loco Locas, and right now I'm starting to see, as he's having these discussions about, and he keeps on breaking into English, and that's what's amazing about French Canadian hip hop, is it constantly breaks into English, and it's just they're talking and talking in French, bars for bars, bars for bars, and then goes into other stuff. At a certain point, they just break into this. One guy says to the other, no matter who he is rapping with, he always stands out. And then they immediately keep going in. They keep going in French. It's quite interesting. It's part of what makes, as a language professor, part of what makes my job so interesting is the codes of language. So obviously, there's codes in language all the time. Right? I mean, if you speak to a child, you speak differently than when you speak to your boss. There's codes, there's racial codification of language in between races, in between different people of different countries. There's all different kinds of codes in the way that we speak. I don't swear on my channel, but I swear in real life. That's a code switch. I don't swear when I'm talking to my boss, but I swear when I'm talking to my colleagues, right? Just a small example. What's great about Canadian rap is that, unlike American rap, Canadian rap is often an expression of the immigrant experience. So the immigrant experience already is linguistically coded. That's the similarity between all immigrant rap, whether it's Hispanic people in America, or Arab and African people in France, or Haitian immigrants in Canada. Whatever it is, there's a play that happens, where in order to understand everything that is said, you have to be a part of the group that is multilingual. And French Canadian rap, in this case, is just you have to know English. Like, you can't, a French person would listen to this album and there'd be entire sections where they'd be like, damn it, what are they saying? I don't speak English. But nobody in Quebec and Montreal is going to hear this and say, oh, I don't get it. It's linguistically coded for the people of Montreal. So I understand if you don't want that. I understand if you feel alienated. But how do you think, somebody in Shanghai feels when a Beyonce album comes out? Like, we need to put ourselves in that experience. That's part of the human experience, is not understanding and enjoying anyways. So, let's actually get into the album. Let's go with the stamp of the album, the first single, Gangsta, produced by Nicholas Craven. Interestingly, it starts off with a description of the ceremony at Bois Quémont. If you studied Haitian history, that's the sort of symbolic, mythological beginning of the slave revolt that led to the creation of the the only republic started by former slaves in the history of civilization. So it's interesting to me because apparently he is of Haitian descent, and it's nice having this little reminder here of that. It's very kind of inspirational. It's very kind of meaningful. It gives a sort of larger sense to the rest of the album. It kind of places it as well as part of this larger Francophone diaspora, which I'm quite interested in. And then the beat comes in. And Nicholas Craven, these like super low horns. You got to put on your headphones to hear this. And then let this stylized kind of synthesizer harpsichord, and then the word gangsta comes in, repeated over and over. And then there's like a 70s piano, and then a 70s wah-wah. It's like a full 1970s orchestra all right in here. And then just right off the bat, just the Dice B just starts off his rapping in just a really positive, upbeat, again, that late 90s French style where everything is enunciated clearly, everything has a meaning. It's like flexing, but it's not flexing about money, it's about flexing about skills, comparing himself to Picasso. He mentions Black Lives Matter. A great example of the code switching that happens between English and French. Tu n'as pas de pot de piscine. Tu n'as pas de pot de piscine. So tu n'as pas is you do not have. Pot to piss in is English. But what I love is that it's really hard teaching the negation of an indefinite article. Language nerd, you're 12 minutes into this video, so you're going to get a French lesson, goddammit. When you negate an indefinite article, a or an, you have to, un or une, you have to change it to de in the negative. So that's what he does here. Tu n'as pas de pot to piss in. I might end up actually teaching this line in the future. I might actually. Because it's such a useful way. Because he doesn't say tu n'as pas un pot de piscine. Tu n'as pas de pot de piscine. And it's just a great mélange of French and English that can really, truthfully only exist in Canada. No French person would ever mix this up like this. Because the facility with English, it has to be near native as it is in much of Quebec. Renaissance is the next song. It's produced by D-Track, who I reviewed before. Great gentle guitar and flute. Don't give an F. I love D-Track because his accent is just really, really strong. I really like his rapping. He actually makes a direct reference to The Big Punisher and this album, Capital Punishment. Maybe someday I'll do a video on Big Pun because these two albums are... he's name-checked because he died. But do you have any idea how good of a rapper Big Pun was? I mean, it's a real tragedy. Anyways, beyond talking about Big Pun, he also says in French, "If art nourishes the soul, I am an agriculturalist." Just beautiful. At a certain point, Dice B makes reference to Ben and Jerry's and then talks about crème glacée, which is a Québécoisism. You call ice cream glace in French, but crème glacée is the more Québécois term because often Québécois is more French than French. It's an identity question. Next song is called Stress, again by Nicholas Craven. Cool kind of catchy chorus to start off with a xylophone, really featuring Sunshine. I can't quite figure out what he's doing on here, But what interests me the most is how this then leads into the next song, Hallelujah, produced by Tricky Beats. I don't think this is a reference to the song Hallelujah, written by another great genius from Montreal, Leonard Cohen. Maybe it is. It starts by talking about Duddy Bookman, the Jamaican person who was one of the leaders of the Bois Quémant ceremony. Hey, maybe you're watching this and you don't know what I mean when I say Bois Quémant because you're not a French student. Let me tell you how I spell that. B-O-I-S space C-A-I-M-A-N. Type those words into Google and read about it. It is one of the most fascinating origin stories, foundational myths in world history. Okay? I mean, Paul Revere riding on a horse, one if by land, two if by sea. Call me when you have sacrificial pigs. Okay? It's an amazing story. So Bookman was one of the people who led that, and it's sort of a history lesson. And I like that because if you're listening to this album and you're Québécois and you don't know the history of Haiti, here we have a very direct lesson about Haiti. Between this and Makami, we're seeing how the diaspora of Haiti is really working to put forward the sense of Haitian pride and sense of Haitian history. What I find interesting about this chorus is it's very sing-songy, and he doesn't do a lot of singing on this album. He's no Zumba rapper. But he goes in and out of English, like talking about like you'll get sprayed, tous les gars ici are here to get paid, like mixing up things here. Je ne suis pas du tout religieux, mais tous les soirs I pray. Like he just mixes in all of these words together where he says, I'm not at all religious, but every night I pray. But he just mixes that all in with English, and again, forcing you to be Canadian to understand this. Funny line about all the boys are F-boys. Women don't know love like they're virgins. Funny line. Nice kind of dynamics. So it's cool because this is the second track not by Nicholas Craven, but it's good. What I like is that the tracks that are not by Nicholas Craven don't sound like they're trying to be Nicholas Craven. Tricky Beats, this whole song, feels quite apart. It's almost even like a trap drum beat at certain points. But what I love and hear is the dynamics, the emotion of the song, how at the end it really builds up. Next song, Où est-ce qu'on va? Produced by someone named Nasbrook, featuring Sunshine. Again, it's a different style. This does remind me a lot of the kind of, in French hip-hop in the 90s, there was a war between the jazzy and the hardcore. The hardcore weren't even that hardcore, really. Lyrically, they were still just like peace and love, but still, their musical style is a little bit more aggressive, and this is a lot more jazzy, and this person says in English, this reminds me of being back in the jazz club, and Sunshine talks about no cheese in our wallet is poverty, lactose intolerant. A funny, kind of goofy line. I like it. And he also says, I'm in my late 30s, got mouths to feed. Which, I'm in my mid-40s, but I like the sentiment of that. What I like here is they keep saying take over. It's the takeover. Où est-ce qu'on va? So like the English of takeover is then turned into où est-ce qu'on va, which means where are we going? So it's kind of an interesting transition from the English to the French. Then, Dice B. I'm so happy about this next line because I get to teach you something you might not know about French cinema appreciation. The French are obsessed with single take shots, plan séquence, just like very long scenes without being cut, which is the reason why they like the movie Touch of Evil by Orson Welles on average more than Citizen Kane by Orson Welles, which is why one of the most preferred directors in the history of cinema in France is Brian De Palma. The movie Snake Eyes with Nicolas Cage, not Nicolas Craven, with Nicolas Cage is a masterpiece movie that gets made fun of because the last 10 minutes Nicolas Cage is too Nicolas Cage. But it starts off with this one shot that's just so beautiful. So in this song, Dice B says that he shoots a sequence, plan séquence, like Brian De Palma. So whatever it is that Dice B knows, he not as a French professor, not only does he represent the Francophone world by representing both Haiti and French Canada, Not only does he represent the Haitian diaspora, which I'm very interested in, but he also shows the Francophone appreciation for cinema, which is markedly different than the American Anglo appreciation for cinema, with their love of Brian De Palma. To the point where in the album by I Am, like Brian De Palma is named directly in the biggest, the most popular French album, French hip hop album of all time. There's an actual like description of what Brian De Palma means to them in the liner notes. Interesting. Next song is called S'émanciper, to free oneself. It's nice because I was driving with my daughter and she said, I like French rap. I'm like, good. I'm glad you do. And so, I said, what do you think this song means? She's like, to free yourself? I'm so proud. I'm so proud. If you have kids, make sure they're bilingual. Nice, gentle pitch sample from Craven here. Ooh, ooh, it's a thing that he says a couple times. Cut up, very super 90s style. Vous faites partie de mon team, mixture of English and French. He also says, je peins ce que je veux, which means I paint what I want, which I think is a sort of quote from Picasso. He mentions Picasso a couple times on this album, so I do think he's... I don't know anything about Dice B except what I saw in that interview. But it seems like he's a super educated guy because it seems like he's accurately describing film criticism and art history at the same time. Next song is called... Oh, sorry, you're going to hear my dog walking around in the background. Next song is called Lion versus Licorne. Licorne is the French word for unicorn. Li is the old French, like the medieval French word for one. So it really means one corn, one horn. This is again produced by Nicholas Craven. Great cut-up sample. The thing that, I think Kanye was the first to do this, or the first to do it really efficiently, is have samples where it's cut off at the end of one bar and then starts at the next, so that it's like you're not getting like a sample that's like 1, 2, 3, 4. You're getting a sample that's like 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, right? I hope that makes sense. So it has that sound, and in between these vocal samples, it's just this nice warbly guitar, more love than emotions. One of the quotes, interesting chorus that actually has a second part. I think this is the only song on the album that I noticed that has like a really pronounced second part. It's the lion versus the unicorn. Is that a reference to Scotland? That's like the Scottish flag. Is it like an anti-Anglophone thing? I don't think so, but I don't know. Satan is on earth, but he cut off his horns. And then he also talks about not being he says in English about not being a house N-word, being an N-word of the field. Interesting, kind of tying into themes of slavery, and it's confusing, right? The heritage of slavery is obviously confusing because if you have a Haitian immigrant to Canada, that's one of the Canadian immigrants who has a direct connection to slavery, which Canada itself didn't directly participate in, but French Canada did. Anyways, it's all quite complicated and interesting. I know where I'm from, so I know where I'm going. And then at the end, he kind of gets playful and plays with this guitar line and sings along with it. The final track is called Adieu, again produced by Nicholas Craven. Cool. The thing about Craven is that he has a much larger... his crates are deeper because he can sample from French records. Obviously other rappers have, Kanye takes from any country, but Nicholas Craven is able to really focus on Francophone music, and often it's just, he finds these great things like he does here. He cuts it up quite nicely all the way throughout. It's a good outro track. The sample gets a little bit reversed, and here the flow is a little bit different. It's a little bit lower. As a final bonus note, I gave myself a little bit of homework, which was in that interview that I was watching, they kept talking about someone named Connoisseur, which means connoisseur. Why do you think that word is in French? Because the concept of a connoisseur is actually a very French concept. The idea that somebody can know so much about something that they are an expert. The French really believe in expertise. So they kept on talking about Connoisseur. Picasso is his name, another reference to Picasso, is like the greatest Francophone rapper. So I'm like, I'm going to find a song by Connoisseur Ticasso and also listen to that to see if I can hear what they're talking about. And wouldn't you know it, like a month ago, Bobo, I'm trying to talk about French Canadian rap. He's the loudest dog in the whole world. Anyways, come here, Bo. Come here. Hey, you want to hop up? I'm doing Thunderground Thursday. Now you're just going to lie on your bed? All right. So, a month ago, Nicholas Craven released another one of his albums. Okay, now the other dog's hopping in. Now Toby's in. Released one of his albums, Craven 3. And, it features Stove God Cooks, and it features Ransom, and a whole bunch of great underground rap artists, and one French-Canadian rapper. And it was Connoisseur Ticasso. So I got a chance to listen. Another great Craven beat, a Craven-type beat. I called him the French-Canadian Alchemist, but don't get it mixed up. He is not a clone of any of these other producers. He brings his own stuff. You can tell when a Craven beat is a Craven beat. And I understand why there's so much deference to Connoisseur. His rhymes are just amazing. L'ennemi caractérise ta carcasse, il te laisse sans vie. Tout le monde est strapped ici, so reste tranquille. Mixing English and French with strapped and so. The enemy will caricature your carcass and leave you without life. Everyone is strapped here, so just be calm. Just mixing all these things together. Really an astounding usage of English and French together. Imaïs, parce que mon son est intact, j'ai aucun tact. F ta own life, j'ai F Tahoe dans un Jeep Tahoe. So it's not only, Toby, there's one thing I will not permit. It is licking on the video. So just zip it. He's mixing together Tahoe, like a Jeep Tahoe, and then the slang for prostitute with the possessive adjective Tahoe. J'ai F-word Tahoe dans un Jeep Tahoe. Hilarious. Fascinating, interesting, and a reward for me who has spent my life learning and teaching French. So there's my review of Dice B. Let's get this international Hall of Fame for hip hop going, huh? I think that'd be good. All right, I think Bo wanted to say hello, so we'll say hello to Bo before I leave on Thunderground Thursday. There you are. You're the one that was causing all that trouble, Bo. All right, there's the camera.